You bring up a concept that I read about in your book, which is this concept of mode. And I
Mhm.
think you refer to it as low intensity mode, mid intensity, and high concentration mode. And so, speaking of those modes, you were talking about prep period being high concentration mode,
Mhm.
where it's not a time to plan your planning, but to actually be in the weeds, grading or getting those high concentration tasks done. And let's face it, grading of essays and grading of student work can be a very draining slog, especially if you're trying to help students with understanding multiple skills or you're evaluating multiple areas of student proficiency. So let's talk a little bit about what you mean by those modes and what do you do in each of those modes and when do you do those modes?
Well, if you make the analogy of like a room temperature, you dress in layers because you just never know if the air is going to be on that day or if it's going to be super hot and sweaty in the classroom, right? You got to adjust. So your modes are kind of the same way. You might totally think, I'm going to get all these essays graded because these kids are going to be watching a video and I'm going to be able to focus. And then instead, you're completely derailed because the video is actually kind of engaging and distracting to you. So you got to be able to shift, just like you'd take the sweater off, you got to be able to shift your mode. But instead of just getting pulled into the video, what else could you be doing that maybe doesn't require the kinds of focus that grading essays would take? And shift into a different mode, into maybe a lower concentration mode. So, okay, I can't concentrate. I'm too distracted by the video. Kids are asking me more questions than I thought they were going to be asking me during this time that I thought was going to be time when I was going to get something done. But what could I be doing instead? And so there, you should always have kind of, whether they're physical lists or just mental lists of things that you could be doing if the mode shifts. And maybe it's even just your own concentration mode. There are times when it's a Friday afternoon and my kids are perfectly silent working on preparing a speech, writing out outlines or something. I'm just like, I am done. I cannot think about another thing today. So instead, I may be straightening up my bookshelves or boxing things that need to go back to the book room, things that physically need to be done in my classroom, but don't take any concentration at all. But to just sit and maybe scroll through your feed on your social media or whatever, I know probably shouldn't be doing that at work, but other equivalents of, maybe checking email more than you need to be doing at that point just because you're kind of distracted. If you have some things lined up to do, future you will thank you because you're not then sticking around after school to box up those books and take them to the book room. Plus, you might actually have some extra labor on your hands of kids that would be willing to help you because you might identify a couple of other kids that are in low concentration mode that would be like, yeah, heck yeah, Miss Linnihan, I'll box those books up and take them to the book room for you. So just having the flexibility to recognize when either your mode shifts or the kids' mode shifts and having those tasks lined up and ready to go so that you can really use all those minutes to the best of their ability is going to help you in the long run. Because a lot of times I would find myself maybe just like kind of spacing out a little bit. Like, for example, between speeches, when kids give speeches, there's a little bit of shuffle time in between where they're writing feedback for each other and I'm pulling up the next video for the next or the next slideshow for the next kid. But I used to kind of stack things up on the side, the rubric that I had just filled out for the previous speech, or their self-evaluations that they're handing to me as they finish doing them. So instead of just setting those to the side, I just know there's something I need to be doing right now. When I feel myself kind of drifting off, what should I be doing? Oh, I should be actually glancing at that self-evaluation. And I have lots of stampers in my, even though I teach high school, I stamp things, good job, 100%, whatever. But it forces me to kind of focus on doing those little manual tasks because something that only takes maybe 15 seconds to glance over a self-evaluation and see that they took it seriously and what's one goal that they have for the next speech, I can put a stamp on that. I can put that in the grade book and be done with it. But if I let 60 of those stack up over the course of the day, that's 15 minutes, maybe a half hour after school that I didn't need to wait to do that. If I have the discipline to do it on the spot and really hold myself accountable to that, I end up using my minutes in a more effective way. The time goes faster. I get the work done and I get out of there and do something different with my evening.